Hi, I'm Dr. Annadale, and I'd like to share with you today one of the more unusual books in my collection. This is a book I bought about 2 years ago from the local thrift shop here in Emmitsburg, the Seton Center. Somebody had donated it, and I don't know who you are, but God bless you, whoever you are. It is a children's book published in 1968, an illustrated children's book about famous philosophers. So if you visualize, what would an illustrated hardback children's book published in 1968 in a sort of mid-60s aesthetic, what would it look like? Well, if you said yellow, you're correct. And if you said very simplistic line drawings and very basic error-riddled text, you're also correct. And here it is. It is 12 great philosophers written by Howard Osman. I actually looked up Mr. Osman. He died in 2014, and after a long career in publishing and teaching philosophy. I'll put a link to his Wikipedia page in the description below. So 12 great philosophers. There's the front cover. We've got, looks like Aquinas in the background in religious ecstasy. We've got Socrates and Russell down there in the corner. And then the back cover, it's like this. We've got Descartes, Dewey, and Hegel. Not sure who this fellow in the corner here is supposed to be. And it's an interesting read, I have to tell you. It has got 12 philosophers in it. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Those are obvious ones. It does skip right from Aristotle to Aquinas, so nothing happening of significance for children in the 15 centuries in between. Then Descartes, Spinoza, Locke. Voltaire, that's a little bit of a surprise to me. I don't think of Voltaire as being a really significant philosopher. Then Kant, Hegel, and then Dewey and Russell in the 20th century. Those seem to me kind of out of place, but I don't know who I would suggest as a 20th century philosopher from the perspective of 1968. Perhaps Bergson, maybe a little bit too early in 68 to expect Nietzsche to be recognized as a significant philosopher of the 19th century. No David Hume, that was a real surprise to me, and no St. Augustine, both of whom I think of as top-ranked philosophers that maybe had some interesting life stories that could have gone into here, but who knows just how decisions are made about this. I'll show you a few of the drawings here. I'll read you a little bit from the introduction in the postscript, and then I'll read you the chapter on Aquinas if you'd like to stick around for the end of the video. So here's the illustration of Socrates. Okay, good mid-60s greenish yellow there. If you want to see Descartes, there's Descartes. And one more. Let's take one of the Bertrand Russell. It's actually alive when this book was published then, in 1968. And we do have a 2.5-page glossary at the end of the book. Let me share with you a little bit of the introduction, if I may, just the first and last paragraphs. Introduction. This book contains a glimpse into the lives and thoughts of 12 great men. These men were philosophers, which is to say, lovers of wisdom. The term philosophy comes from two Greek words, philia, to love, and sophia, wisdom. Philosophy is concerned with the love of wisdom and the why of life itself. The philosopher is one who thinks deeply about all that concerns mankind, about everything that a man might feel or know or hope to know. Then the final paragraph. This book deals with the lives and the ideas of some of these great men. Many of them not only had important ideas, but lived exciting lives as well. The lives of our philosophers, as you will see, were as heroic and colorful as those of many kings, knights, poets, and saints. And then Mr. Osman also wrote a postscript, very brief. Hope not too much significance in the ruins illustrating the page. Postscript. All of the philosophers in this book have dedicated their lives toward helping man understand better the world in which he lives. It is through the work and the inspiration of such men that the people of the world have become more noble and intelligent. To our philosophers we owe a debt of gratitude which it is beyond the ability of all men to ever pay. And I said I would share a chapter with you. Let me share with you the chapter on Aquinas, since he's somebody I know a little bit about. Get to this. In between Aristotle and Descartes, there is Aquinas. Here's the illustration of Thomas Aquinas. And here we go. Aquinas, AD 1225 to 1274. 1500 years after the death of Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas was born in a castle near Naples, Italy in 1225 AD. The whole world had changed in many ways during that long period. The Roman Empire had arisen in Italy and ruled for a time even more of the world than Alexander the Great had managed to conquer. Christianity and Islam had become the great religions of the Western world, and the Latin language had become the language of learning. Almost all the characteristics of Roman civilization, with the exception of the Latin language and Christianity, had been destroyed or forgotten in a long series of wars and tragedies in which the Roman power was eaten away by nomadic tribes called barbarians, with a capital B. So much was destroyed and forgotten that the period in which Aquinas lived was called the Dark Ages. Many people were ignorant and superstitious. Even wealthy and powerful rulers like Charlemagne could not read or write, and every city was fortified against its neighbors. Religion was the most powerful influence on people's lives during this time. The learning that had survived rested in monasteries, with every idea being tested against faith and Christian revelation. When he was 6 years old, Aquinas was placed in a monastery by his parents so that he could learn to read and write and receive an education. Religion became such a large part of his life, however, that he decided to join the Dominican order. His family strongly opposed this, and while on his way to France, he was seized by his brothers and held a prisoner for over a year. Seeing that his mind was firmly set, however, his parents finally consented to his joining the order. When he was 20 years old, he went to live in Paris, where he studied under the greatest living authority on Aristotle, St. Albertus Magnus. Aquinas was conspicuous by his tall, fat figure, as well as his extreme shyness. He appeared so ridiculous in the eyes of his classmates that they nicknamed him the dumb ox. When St. Albertus Magnus heard of this, he said, "You call him the dumb ox. I tell you this dumb ox shall bellow so loud that his bellowing will fill the world." Aquinas wrote many books, all of them related to theology and the Christian Church. He sought to prove that the principles of philosophy do not conflict with Christianity, because faith rests on rational foundations. Aristotle's work had been rediscovered and appreciated in Aquinas' time, but there was a problem. Aristotle lived before the time of Christianity, and his thoughts had to be reconciled with Christian revelation in order to be accepted by the Church. Aquinas completed this task and gave Christian theology its first solid philosophical foundation. Aquinas was a careful worker who could spend weeks and months working on a small but complex philosophical problem, such as how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. Legend has it that the study of this question earned him the title Angelic Doctor. Now, I have to pause here for a moment and say, I know God bless you wherever you are now, Howard Osman, but you just totally made that up. Aquinas was not particularly social, and when he was invited out, he would generally sit very still in contemplation. On one such occasion, after thinking long and hard on a difficult problem, Aquinas interrupted the party by bringing his huge sledgehammer fist down on the table and shouting, "That finishes the Manichaeans." The Manichaeans had been a particularly troublesome philosophical group for Aquinas. Aquinas died at the age of 49, and his loss was a great one for religion. He was canonized a saint by Pope John XXII, and his works are still avidly read today by philosophers and theologians of many different religions. So, that's a sample chapter from 12 Great Philosophers by Howard Osman. I hope you enjoyed my sharing it with you. Maybe I'll share some other unusual books from my bookshelf in future videos. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.